welcome to Mystic Brew. I am Radagast, and I just want to talk a little bit, I guess, about direction and plans for what I want to do on the channel. I had about 5 minutes of a video started and realized my mic was not on. So the direction I really want to take the videos that I put out into is creating conversations of at least what I perceive as utility. So basically, it's kind of like everybody's having conversations, and I will introduce what I think is a good focus, a focus of utility. I'm really, when I look out at the world, and especially the internet world, and there's so many ideas that get popped up. It's like things like Nibiru and things like that. And just so people know, Jordan Maxwell is quoted as being a very good friend of Zecharia Sitchin, the one who brought Nibiru into our consciousness, along with the Anunnaki. I mean, he did some good work, but to me, other than as a person who opened a gateway of awareness of this other group of people on the planet, and whose activities seem to get echoed, at least, into especially the Old Testament. But on his deathbed, he confided or shared with Jordan that we would never see Nibiru in our lifetime. So there might be something out in the solar system. Given the way the solar system is behaving, as far as perturbations, I mean, yes, there we see some activity. It looks like planets are heating up. But as far as things maybe being affected by gravity, that doesn't really seem to be such an instance. But needless to say, Nibiru, by the man who brought it into our consciousness, is supposedly not a concern. So, again, when people say, "Oh, did you see the latest about Nibiru?" Nibiru is off of my charts. Again, I'm not saying that there might not be some other planetary disturbance or discovery, but so far, I'm not feeling it in the noosphere. I don't get glimmers of it in my altered states. And I go in there, I mean, I'm definitely aware of that. It's not like I haven't done a little traveling around that subject. But anyway, so to get back to this channel, about bringing in topics of conversation that I believe are of utility for the planet, for our realm, Earth. I'm using the word realm because this way here we can get, just in case anybody out there who's, more comfortable with flat Earth, let's just say we have a realm that we live in, the realm of Earth. And there are a lot of things happening. These are really, really world-shaping times, and the shape of the world affects how we experience the realm. This blessed, what was originally a blessed realm, and how it's become kind of a very unblessed realm. It's gone from being a wholesome realm to a holy realm, with all the holy terror that comes with it. And so I really want to create conversations that I feel produce or effect greater connectivity between all of us, human beings, or as the word I like, anthropos, because we won't find human being messed around with in Black's Law, that dark grimoire that has been, that is the web woven around the anthropos, or humanity, and that these invisible threads that restrain us, that keep us from being free. I'm keeping a little eye on this because I'm going to have, my alarm's going to go off when my rice is ready. So, and the other thing is, part of this is going to be difficult for me because it really goes after to get back to freedom, to get back to really reveal the fuckery. We're gonna have to look at how much the organized religions have played a part. And all are culpable to one degree or another. But the three Abrahamic religions, in their own way, have been very problematic. And this is where I have a little preparation here. The most problematic has definitely been Christianity. And so people might go, oh, but what about the Muslims? If you kind of track where Christianity swept over the indigenous peoples of Europe and North Africa, if you follow where the Roman Empire was, and then watch them withdraw, and then watch where the Muslim jihadists followed, you will see that in many ways the Muslims followed in the track of a devastated people. In other words, the shock troops were the Roman Empire, and as you get into the the 3rd century A.D., the Roman Empire and Christianity are synonymous. When Christianity became the official Roman religion, now you had an official religion of the emperor, and you had armed people to make sure that you were at least saying the right things in public. So that's one of the ways that you take the old ways and the old connections and the tens of thousands of years of tradition and make them go away, because you bring in a new belief system that has armed backup. So really, when I was looking at where the Muslims went across North Africa and where they went into Europe, I really couldn't find a place that the Christians hadn't already stomped into stomped the indigenous faces into the dirt already. And so to provide some comfort, because when you talk about Christianity as an institution, as a system, as one of a form of government, really, but a form of government that gets into your head, a form of government that seems to hold, that where the worldly government and the otherworldly government still have a saying on what happens to you when you die. You're not out of the clutches of the government. Now you have another judgment. You might go to hell, and all these other horrors that are attached to this control system. And many people growing up the majority of the people growing up in the industrialized Western world were born into Christian families. And so whether or not they, accepted it, or like myself at 14, after being an altar boy for 5 years, just decided, after conversations with the reverends, because I was an Episcopalian, so that's Anglican, and getting, and then always having this background text that led into Christianity called the Old Testament, and just reading that and being able actually to not finish reading much of it there because of the horror, because of the revulsion at the behavior of the supposed creator. So when we're talking about the system of Christianity, I'm not really talking about Christians per se. They can be part of the problem if they have sold their soul to their religion. If they've sold their soul to their religion, then in many ways they become part of that machine. At least the moral support, at least the cheerleading aspect of it. Some people still are from the traditions. They don't know what to replace it with, but they haven't really sold their soul. And a lot of times these people can be considered agnostic as opposed to atheistic. I was agnostic, then an atheist, and then I discovered some Tibetan Buddhism things, actually in the form of Lobsang Rampar's books, introducing a whole different concept of what a creator God might be. And although I've moved on even from that, it was a creator God I wasn't embarrassed of. It wasn't one that I said, I could do a bit. At 14, I said, I am emotionally more mature and stable than this supposed creator of our world and us. So what I'd like to offer for anybody, especially who's kind of still feeling the pull of Christianity, is that Jesus is obviously central to certainly the attraction of Christianity. Because when we look at the behaviors of what Christianity did to the indigenous people, not only at first in Europe and then in the Americas, it's a horror story. It's nothing but ugliness. And so, but that's because it's it's really a state. The religion is to own your mind, body, and soul. States can only own your body. Religions can get the rest of it. And then make you even concerned about what happens, again, when you leave your body. Okay. So what I would just like, for those who say, but I like Jesus. Well, you know something? First, okay, so we kind of have the Jesus of the New Testament. Those are very selected texts as far as whether or not Jesus was even a real person. The amount of material, at least on a Jesus person or a Christ entity, there's a huge amount of it. And a very small part of that got into the New Testament. So what's interesting is if, and then even in the New Testament, there are many sayings that I feel are quite wise and transcendental. You can really break down some walls with those ideas. You can really access the supernatural with them. And there are other ones that's going, sounds like something an emperor might say. So I feel that that the New Testament Jesus is a mixture of great wisdom, great love, great revelation, and some mind control. But the other interesting thing is that there's another Jesus in many ways, and that is a Jesus that emerges, or a Christ figure, a Jesus Christ we'll call him. Another figure arises in the Gnostic texts. And as far as using the Nag Hammadi for understanding the Gnostics, it's not so great. Again, if you know what you're looking for, if you know what the Gnostics really were, if you know that they were, in a continuation of the mystery schools, they're a continuation of tens of thousands of years of esoteric and practical knowledge. But if you really want to know about the Gnostics, the Nag Hammadi is a tricky path. But if you want to know about another Jesus Christ, the Nag Hammadi codexes are brilliant because they have the Gospel of Philip and Thomas, which later on have been kind of published separately. So there's books on the Gospel of Philip and the Gospel of Thomas, but they're not put side by side with the Gospel of John and Matthew and Mark and Luke. So I guess part of why I'm saying that is because as I go forward, if I'm going to do some unveiling, if I'm going to do some sharing, I'm going to have to go in certain directions to be effective. And again, I want to keep as many people with me as possible on this journey. And so for me, anybody who, again, say, oh, if you're going to go against Jesus, I'm not sure I can take this trip with you. All I can say is, please find out that there is another historical configuration of who Jesus was and what his message was. And you will see that the message that is revealed from the teachings of that Jesus would never have amounted to the religion of Christianity. So I think because what we need to do is take away the control systems and keep any wisdom. And a lot of times there's a lot, because with any kind of toxin or a poison, that poison will be inserted into something wholesome. It's a few drops of poison into a drink, and usually imperceptible amounts of it. Same thing with food. You take good food and you lace it with poison, but usually imperceptible to the taste buds. So any good poisoning requires something wholesome to place it into. And this is what, to me, we see with any of the scriptures. You'll see a lot of wisdom. You'll see a lot of heart feeding. You'll see stories that can, by reading them, can transform your life. There's enormous goodness in the holy books, but they're vectors for something that is not wholesome. And part of tracing that will be part of what I will be doing going forward for at least for the for the foreseeable future. It's not an endless story. There comes to a point where, okay, that's all I have to say on it, and it's either something you find of utility and actionable, and usually it's an interaction. So that makes it a difference. A lot of this is about clearing out our psychology, clearing out the infections and the fungi, the kind of fungi we don't want, that have rooted in our wetware, so to speak, and how to clear that out. And part of that isn't so much as it's a combination of pointing at viral or pathogenic behavior and then doing our best to pull from history prior to what things look like prior to that infection. And by making this, we kind of can do this kind of looping where we have to move forward. But part of it is like we're here, we kind of loop back, pick up some stuff that we lost, and then we get right back to where we are. It's not a long journey. And part of that is, let's just consider that a couple of times around the wash cycle as we wash out our programming. But we really do. There isn't a unifying place for us to stand together. As far as like a commonality of where we arise and understanding where we arose and where we continue to arise gives us back the power that was taken from us, gives us back the natural magic that was part of being in a world where natural and supernatural were one and the same thing. Natural was the physical natural part, and the supernatural was the non-physical natural part. But the word natural is in both of these words, and they both come from nature, Mother Nature, where we arise from. And I think, and I might go into a few things like a more in-depth look at our subtle anatomy, understanding how our chakras work, understanding that the third eye is not really the destination, the heart is. The third eye is like a third eye, okay? So it certainly assists in perception, but to think that what if you manage to open up your third eye and you can now perceive the supernatural, do you have the wisdom that comes from your heart to understand what it is you are seeing? Will you have the wisdom when you realize that there are interactions with the supernatural? Will you have the wisdom to interact the right way with the right energies? Can you tell the difference between wholesome and unwholesome or holy? So that's kind of where I want to take things, what I want to do. And so with that said, I can kind of set myself a little bit on a trajectory, hoping that people watch this as kind of like an introduction. At some point, I might even move this to, I guess there's a place on the YouTube channel where you kind of talk about what your channel is, but I might want to make something a little more focused. But, and also, if you've stuck with me this long, I really enjoyed the talk I had with Raksha Moose, and I'm going to open a dialogue with him because we did it not this past Friday, the Friday before that. And so I'm going to approach him about doing it for this coming up Friday, where it'll have been 2 weeks in between those talks. And if that goes well, maybe that'll be kind of like a schedule, like maybe every 2 weeks, Raksha and I will speak and talk about our passion, which is community. And he has 2 shows a week And he does his, and his shows are live, so you can interact with them. He's talking to you live. He's interacting with a live chat. It's it's very dynamic. It's as dynamic as the participants will allow. He's always dynamic. And meanwhile, I'm going to still kind of be continuing with what I do, which is making videos from some prepared notes and thoughts. Very often, I mean, actually, these days, I have so many notes because I'm getting so much material that it's almost, I look and I go, I'm supposed to make I mean, this is one page of 2 pages of notes. And also a lot of it is raw, and I'm realizing that I can't do show on raw thoughts. These are the ones that kind of come through in moments of inspiration. Then I kind of have to go through my inspiration, most likely turn it into a form of speaking language. These are more like thought ejaculations. And also just kind of make sure it's clean. It's really interesting how taking information from other realms and other sources, and even if it's the higher self, how there's still, it gets onto paper, but even then sometimes there's an expansion, and sometimes there could even be, what got in the way in that transmission. So, but I'm going to be going through my notes and putting together coherent videos, but most importantly, it's looking for a way of unifying in a spiritual and even magical sense, understanding that in my case, magic is the natural magic, the passive magic, not this willful stuff. Not that, again, there's will has its place, but there's also, let's call it, trying to direct rainstorms as if rainstorms don't know where they need to go. There's certain amounts of wisdom in when you start getting into more manipulative type stuff that I generally stay away from and have stayed away from. I mean, I started a few years after I began, I went into it and I realized, no, this is not good stuff. At least the way I had approached it. And even now I have my reservations. Natural magic is something that you're working with. I'm talking about like the devas, nature spirits. I mean, the unseen world that exists and has basically been waiting for us to pay attention to it, not so it can play tricks on us, so that we can work with it. There's a lot of the unseen world that isn't so much part of what we'll call the biosphere, and it's kind of like being in the ocean, and there are sharks in that ocean, and I won't call them evil. They just see you as food. And it doesn't make them evil, but you probably, if something wants you as food, you probably shouldn't enter into a dialogue for it, because if you're still on the menu throughout that dialogue at some level. So, even though I will be speaking a lot about our magical nature, I'm talking about the almost the kind of magic behind our breathing and our heart beating, natural things. But obviously the natural magic involves nature, Mother Nature, our Mother Goddess. So that'll be it. That's kind of where I'd like to take this. So that's the kind of direction and plans. And again, for those people who really feel a connection with Jesus, the Spirit, and I do, the Christ Spirit, something I've actually worked with, because it's a wholesome spirit. But you might want to either the Nag Hammadi codexes, or just maybe even look up the Gospel of Thomas or the Gospel of Philip, and realize that there's a huge that actually the corpus of work attributed to Jesus or a Messiah is huge. The amount that people in Christianity are exposed to through the New Testament is tiny. And because it had to pass through the filters of the Council of Nicaea, which was largely, was Constantine driven, a Roman emperor, you can't imagine, again, when you're going to sprinkle fecal flakes into it. You can only put so much in there without exposing that it tastes like shit. So the majority of the wisdom in the New Testament is good stuff. From like Jefferson had, I guess, his own Bible that was just the sayings of Jesus. But there are a lot of sayings of Jesus, and the Gnostic texts are a brilliant way to see for another window into somebody that to a personage, a god, however you want to define this person. Again, it's not for me to do these definitions for you, but somebody who stands huge on the world stage, and especially the world stage as it has affected the world, and especially in the past, in America, in the Americas, the past like 200-300 years. I mean, again, for the indigenous people of the Americas, seeing the cross might as well have been seeing the Grim Reaper's scythe for their lifestyle and the way they lived on the planet. And so that is, I'm repeating myself. So, but anyway, I guess what I'm just trying to do is that if I go out in future, it seems like I'm centering on what I consider to be probably the worst of the monotheisms because of its impact on the ancient world, the natural world, the indigenous world. It's about it being really little more than a Roman system that got picked up by governments, a way of governing. And that's what I'm going after. I'm not going after Christians. I'm not going after Jesus. So I guess I'll just leave it with that. And I will be talking to Raksha Moose, and I hope to have another Mystic Brew up in a few days, especially now that I'm kind of set on a direction, and would hopefully have a confirmation. And so that'll be it. So stay sane, stay loving, love for all, hatred for none, as far as hatred for no people. And I'll see you next time.